Welcome back, everyone. It is Eric from Rare Candy, and today I'm back with you guys checking out some more Japanese tournament results courtesy of our friends over at PokemonCard.io. But what makes these results kind of interesting is that these are going to be the very first batch of results from Japan where Scarlet and Violet is going to be legal for play. So they've already rotated and have these new cards. So this could give us a small glimpse maybe into what we can expect once these cards are finally legal for play over here. Now, one thing I think it's important to keep in mind, these are not going to be like giant 1,000-person regional events or anything like that. These are largely results from, smaller local shop tournaments. So think of them on the same scale as like a league challenge or a league cup. And even though I've picked out a good handful of decks to look at today, there's also still a ton of other archetypes that are winning over there. So if you guys want to check out some of these other winning decks, I'll have a link down below in the description so you can check out all of these different winning lists. But with that being said, guys, remember to smack that like button, feed that always hungry YouTube algorithm, and let's jump in and check out what's winning over in Japan. So I think it's probably appropriate. We're just going to dive right into Gardevoir EX, debatably the most hyped new deck alongside Miraidon EX. But here we have what I think is going to be, I think a really straightforward take on Gardevoir. As you can see, they have the 4-4-1-1-2 Gardevoir line. They have the one Buddy Catch Gallade. I'm pretty sure this is the Shining Arcana Gardevoir, the one from Chilling Reign. But then, as you can see, they have a couple of other backup attackers here. We have the Zacian V. Its attack, I think, is 60 plus 20 for each psychic energy attached to it, if I'm remembering right. So, of course, we can accelerate a ton of energy with Gardevoir, get that guy powered up. We have the Wijler V, which I think is actually a pretty cool inclusion, just because you can accelerate all of your psychic energy into play with Gardevoir, retreat into Wijler, and take like a giant one-hit KO. So this definitely seems really good, especially I could see this for like mirror matches and, against VMAXs and stage 2 EXs that are traditionally a little difficult to one-shot. We got a Drapion for Mew, that makes sense. We have an Unknown V, a card I honestly kind of forgot about, even though it didn't come out that long ago. But its attack is like, if you have one prize card left, you just win the game. So if you are in a spot where you can't knock out your opponent's active for your last prize, you can just use this maybe. And then I think this is Galarian Articuno. I think this is the Crown Zenith, like full art version of it. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure what that is. But also seems to make sense. You can do that 120 snipe with it and then just accelerate the energies back into play with Gardevoir. Seems cool. We have a Sky Sealstone. Guess that makes sense with, actually kind of cool with Wijler and the Drapion. So again, I think this is going to be a more straightforward, aggressive take on Gardevoir. But as you'll see, we have a couple of other lists that take Gardevoir in a little bit of a different direction too. So this one definitely looks a little bit more defensive, I guess you could say, or, is going for a slightly more control-oriented strategy. So you can see they're trying to lead the game with Klefki, which definitely makes sense. I have one Gardevoir list right now that looks actually kind of like this. So they just want to start with the Klefki, probably get 2 of these in play in case of Escape Rope, and just try to shut down things like Genesect, Comfy, etc. while you get set up. So that seems to make sense to me. They are also playing one of the Kirlia from Chilling Reign, I believe it is, the one that accelerates 3 other Kirlias into play. They're also not playing any Gardevoir or Gallades, just the 2 Gardevoir EX. So that is where this list definitely diverges, I think, a little bit from some of the other lists we're looking at. But the big Pokemon inclusion is the Mewtwo V Union, which is kind of a cool addition. Because you can trade away the Mewtwo V Union pieces with your Kirlias throughout the game. And, if you can get this guy set up at the end, you can accelerate all of your energy to it with Gardevoir and, start doing that, the 16 damage counter spread attack. There's another attack that, does it hit for 300 or something like that? Mewtwo has a bunch of really good attacks. So this seems like a cool, late game finisher. And I could definitely see even in mirror matches, if your opponent doesn't have anything that could one-shot Mewtwo, you could literally just keep healing with the first attack until they deck out. Mewtwo seems cool. Definitely a little bit clunkier than some of the basic attackers in the last list, but this definitely seems like an inclusion worth experimenting with. We have the 3 V-Guard energy as well. That's another big difference between this and the last list, which again does make some sense. Gardevoir does have colorless energy and its attack cost. Same thing for Mewtwo as well. And especially if you're accelerating some energy to Mewtwo and taking some damage counters in the process, the V-Guard energy almost kind of cancels that out a little bit if you're going against some sort of Pokemon V-based deck. We have a Lost City, which is kind of interesting. So we have a Cheryl. So again, sort of going for the tanking denial strategy here makes sense with Gardevoir. Of course, you can just share off all the damage recycle your energies right back. Yeah, overall some pretty cool stuff going on with this more defensive Mewtwo list. Okay, so we have a Shadow Rider take on Gardevoir, which does seem to make some sense here. Typically what we've seen with Shadow Rider in the past is that it's always kind of struggled to hit like one-hit KOs on its own. So we've seen it had to be paired with other cards like Alchemy VMAX to take those big one-shots. But Gardevoir, I think in theory, aims to fix that by giving you additional energy acceleration beyond what your VMAX can provide in a single turn. And you're just trying to push that damage all the way up to take big one-shots. So definitely makes some sense. I'm still not sure if this is the best way to play Gardevoir or not, but you know, I could definitely see it. They also have a Gallade in this list, unlike the last one. So, of course, has the Buddy Catch ability where they can search a supporter out of their deck. The Stadium is also a little bit interesting as well. The Primordial Altar, so you get to look at the top card of your deck, choose if you want to discard it. So I guess you can turbo through your deck a little bit more, toss away some additional energies. We also have the 4 Seal Stones, that makes sense too. Got a couple rare candies, so they're playing the mix of candies and the Kirlias. But yeah, I mean, for what this deck is trying to do, I think this list looks pretty decent starting point, I'd have to say. Alrighty, so this is going to be the last Gardevoir EX deck we're taking a look at. Or, well, technically we have another one to look at that has Gardevoir in it, but this is the last one where Gardevoir is sort of like a focal point of the deck. So this is like another sort of defensive style deck. It's almost a kind of a mix between the very first one we looked at and the second one we looked at, where they're not playing the Mewtwo V Union. They do play the Weirdeer V, but they also do play a couple copies of Comfy as well, maybe to slow down their opponent. And they still have some of the healing cards in their deck with the Radiant Serena and the Cheryl as well. Agatha also kind of cool here. I didn't even think about that. That makes some sense. I'm pretty sure it's like you can move up to 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to your opponents, I think it is. Or maybe it's to one of yours, but I'm pretty sure you move it off of one of yours to your opponent. Feel free to correct me if I'm misremembering that. But that seems cool because you can obviously take some damage counters with your Gardevoir, move it over to your opponent, or in the case of Serena, you can take a couple damage counters after you accelerate your energy, then heal a little bit of it off. We see they're also playing Cross Switcher, which is something I haven't really noticed in the other list up until this point either. So I guess maybe this is to help enable the Weirdeer plays a little bit easier. I could definitely see that because whenever you do want to set up Weirdeer, nothing in your deck really has free retreat. So you do have to get rid of additional energies whenever you move into it. So this definitely could be a way at ensuring that you can preserve as much energy on Weirdeer as possible when you move it to the active. Curious, there's no rare candy in the deck. Like if you're playing the Arven, that almost makes me feel like you should be playing like 1 candy or something just in case. But I didn't win the tournament, so what do I know, right? Definitely curious what you guys are thinking about these different Gardevoir variants. Definitely let me know in the comment section too which direction you think you might be taking whenever you start building with this card. But as you'll see, Gardevoir EX decks aren't the only ones making use of the whole Kirlia engine. We have a couple of older archetypes trying to use it as well. It kind of seems like this is going to be like a soft replacement for the Inteleon engine. And as you can see, this is going to be Palkia with Gardevoir and Kirlia. And the Gardevoir is actually kind of cool here too because its ability, I'm pretty sure it accelerates any energy, not just Psychic. So this is an alternate way you can power up your Palkia if you don't have something like a Melanie. But also, it looks like they're playing Kyogre as like maybe a big late game finisher. So I think that's another area where the Gardevoir can come into play, especially if you've already used your V-Star power earlier in the game. Gardevoir allows you another way to accelerate to your 1-prize Pokemon without the use of Palkia in the process. As you can see, they have the double energy recycler, so it definitely looks like their big late game play is kind of like what Lost Box does, where you just put all of your energy back into your deck at the end of the game, accelerate 2 onto your Kyogre, attach from hand, and discard the other top 5 cards of your deck, all being energy, to take a couple easy prizes on your opponent's bench. And I think this list actually looks pretty solid. I think this is a really good starting point. I really can't see a whole lot that looks kind of sus to me by any means at all. So next up we have Arceus Gardevoir, which is kind of just like a revamped version of Arceus Inteleon. So I know somewhere Luke from Celia's Network is going to be ecstatic to maybe give this a whirl. I know he likes that deck a lot. But yeah, same sort of idea. You're trying to tank with Arceus. We got the Radiant Gardevoir, we got the 1 V-Guard energy. And even though there is some pretty intense glare, I'm pretty sure these 2 cards right here are Sharon's Care, and we have the PAL pads to be able to get those back. But one of the things I really like about this engine as opposed to Inteleon is the Buddy Catch Gallade that we have here. You just need literally a single one in play, and you can just keep searching the exact supporter you want turn after turn, which is honestly pretty awesome. So as you guys can see, Mew VMAX still very good after rotation. This is one of the few decks that really doesn't lose a whole lot, and even looking at this list, the only new card that I can really see is going to be the one Defiant band. So it looks like all they did was really switch a belt to a band and sort of call it a day. And here we have one more Mew list. This is going to be the Del Turbo version. And when I was looking through the tournament results, it did look like there was a good mix of both versions. So no matter your preference, it looks like Mew VMAX is still going to be pretty solid. Now with this list, from what I can tell, I don't see actually any new cards in this one. You know, I actually wouldn't have been surprised if we had seen Arven make its way in here. I think that actually is a card that, at least at a glance, seems to have a ton of synergy with Mew, because you can grab obviously an item and then one of your tools. So a Forest Sealstone, belt, or a band if you do include band in your list as well. But yeah, Mew is still doing Mew stuff apparently. Okay, so I'm actually kind of stoked on this deck here. We have Oinkologne EX. This is actually, I think, one of my most underrated cards of the set. And this list is actually really similar to one that I've been working on too. As you can see, they're going for a sort of slight disruption tanking strategy with Oinkologne. So if you guys aren't familiar with it, its first attack is just one colorless, but then it's 10 plus 30, I think, for every bench Pokemon your opponent has in play, if I'm remembering right. So you're just trying to hit with this thing over and over, chipping away at your opponent. And because it's only a single energy, you can use things like V-Guard to make yourself a little bit tankier, and also Lucky Energy. I am kind of surprised they're using Radiant Greninja though. That definitely seems a little bit odd to me, since special energies typically aren't things you want to get rid of. Radiant Gardevoir just seems like it would make more sense, but I could be wrong. Haven't tested this person's list. But they're sort of trying to double down on the tank strategy with the 3 copies of Cheryl and the 2 copies. I'm pretty sure this is Sharon's Care right next to it here, which both are perfect for Oinkologne, because you can share off all your damage, reattach a single energy, and keep on going. Oh, they do have the full face guard as well. That's another minus 20 reduction. And they have the Path to the Peak to slow down other decks like Mew and decks they're using Radiant Greninja. So yeah, Oinkologne, I think it's actually like a sleeper card of Scarlet and Violet, and it's cool to see it winning a tournament. Just curious to see if this will continue into larger scale events as well. And it also looks like Giratina is finally going to be coming out of the shadows once again after the rotation happens, because, you know, it's kind of died off a little bit in the Silver Tempest and Crown Zenith formats. Lugia has just also been gatekeeping a lot of decks, including Giratina, and kind of as expected, I think this is a really just solid, straightforward looking Giratina list that we have here. As you can see, they are choosing to play the one Defiant band here. I'm assuming this is to help against Gardevoir EX, since you're 30 shy and Choice Belt wouldn't help you out. However, I am a little bit surprised by the lack of Vacuum in the list. I feel like Vacuum just seems like a staple for any Lost Zone based deck going forward, just because it is that much harder to get to that magic 7 number without Scoop Up Net. So curious to know how consistent this is doing that without that, unless you're banking on using Giratina's first attack or something. That's the only other thing I can really think of to help expedite things a little bit more. But other than that, looks like a pretty straightforward list. And the other Giratina idea that I saw that actually had a couple winning lists for was this idea with Banette EX. And I think this sort of actually accomplishes fixing one of the things I just mentioned about like the standard Giratina decks, is that, again, without Scoop Up Net in the format, you do kind of need other ways at expediting your Lost Zone process and getting to that magic 7 number. So it looks like they are opting to play the Lost to Origin Banette, which of course can get a supporter out of your discard, and then you send Banette into the Lost Zone. So that makes sense to me. That sort of, again, gets around the lack of Scoop Up Net, but also does allow you to play Banette EX as well. I could also see this being a card you could use to slow down your opponent with your item lock attack until you hit that magic 7 number. So that seems cool. I'm assuming this is the new Shuppet that item locks, so that also could be a nice Pokemon to lead the game with. But overall, the deck is a little less like traditional Lost Zone decks. Like, they're only playing 2 Comfey. It's just the counts of certain cards in the deck that are a little odd to me. Again, like 2 VIP Pass seems a little bit sus. I feel like you go 4 or nothing really, but hey, it ended up working out for them. So maybe this is the only way, or one of the only ways I can see to play Banette in the short term. But there was another Banette idea I wanted to at least throw up here. I'm still not totally sold on this card just yet. But I think it does make a little bit of sense in how they're trying to play this here, because they have the Acerola's Premonition. I'm pretty sure this is, you look at your opponent's hand and you draw for each trainer card that's there. So of course, when you're item locking your opponent, you know, they're inherently going to have more trainer cards clunking up that hand. And this definitely could give you some pretty good draw power. So that's cool. And since you're playing Acerola's Premonition, I mean, at that point, you may as well play Mimikyu GX, or Mimikyu VMAX, sorry. I think it's like if you played Acerola's Premonition, you get to spread 12 damage counters. I forget. It's something like that. It looks like they're actually playing the other Banettes as well. They're playing both. They have the Lost Origin one, and then they also have this one here. I think it's from Chilling Reign, if I remember correctly, but you put damage counters on Banette, or you put up to 7 damage counters on Banette, I think it is, and does 20 for each damage counter you placed in that way. So just like a little decent hitting one prize Pokemon. Cool deck idea though, just very skeptical, I will say that. Okay, so here we have a Houndstone deck, and this is the other like sort of Gardevoir deck I mentioned at the beginning of the video. So of course, Houndstone, it does 80 plus 10 for each Psychic Pokemon in your discard pile. So they're just trying to toss away tons of Psychic Pokemon to do more damage. And it is actually kind of cool. They're playing the, was this the Silver Tempest Gardevoir or Lost Origin one? I forget what set this came out in, but it's the same exact ability as Kirlia, but on a stage 2, which seems like kind of bad most of the time. Like most of the time, I think you'd rather just evolve into the Gallade or maybe even the other Gardevoir, but it's almost like a way of playing 7 Kirlias, if you want to think about it in that way. So that seems neat. They're also playing 4 Tower of Darkness plus the Shuppet and Banette here. So the one thing I do like about this evolution line is that it gives you a single energy attacker you can use. The big issue with Houndstone, it does require 2 manual attachments until at least you get your Gardevoir EX set up. So this could be a good early game Pokemon. Just start pressuring your opponent, and you know, you can of course toss them away with Tower. So really interesting engine that they've come up with for this. They also are playing a Grant, which might look a little bit weird to some players, but the reason they're playing it, of course, is just to be able to use the discard effect to get it back into their hand. So yeah, really cool. You know, some very creative deck building choices they went with here. All right, and the other big archetype I know you guys want to see lists for is going to be Miraidon EX. And like in the case of Gardevoir, there's a couple of different ways players are taking this archetype. With this one being, I think, a relatively straightforward one. I think this is going to be approximately what you'll see from a lot of early lists. Maxing out their Pokemon for max consistency, the 4 Miraidon, the 4/4 Regieleki VMAX, and then just the 1 Raikou, which is cool. I think the deck probably does need some sort of 2 energy attacker. So this, or even Pachirisu, both seem okay to me. But as you can see, they're not playing any Flaffy. They're not playing even other things like Lumineon or Radiant Greninja. Got a couple of EXP shares for whenever something gets knocked out. That makes sense. I feel like you kind of have to play this and or Raihan if you're not playing Flaffy. We got the heavy count of Arven, which I actually do kind of like here, because of course you get an item and a Pokemon tool. So being able to grab these tools on the exact turns you want them definitely seems really good to me. And you can also grab your lightning generator. The only thing I kind of want to see from this list though is some copy of Choice Belt or like Defiant Band. But either way, I think this is a pretty decent looking sort of streamlined Miraidon deck idea. So this next one's definitely sort of the same way. There's no Flaffies or anything like that. But what makes this thing interesting is the crazy engine that they're using for this. So right off the gate, they're not playing any research. They got 4 Boss, 3 Avery, 3 Arven, and what looks like 4 Adventures Discovery, which actually seems like a cool card because you're probably going to have a Miraidon in play anyways. So as long as you have one of these in play, this can search out your other Miraidons, but then Adventures Discovery can search for all of your Regieleki pieces. So that seems pretty cool. Though I think I would have liked to have seen maybe 1 Nest Ball in this deck just for the games you don't open with Miraidon. That way, if you have Arven, you can at least Arven for a Nest Ball to get 1 Miraidon set up. Also maxing out Beach Court and Escape Rope, which I think is a little bit overkill. You're probably not going to need 8 switching methods for this deck, for being honest. But the other insane thing here is the 20 Lightning Energy. I'm pretty sure this is 20. I feel like this guy was testing Miraidon and just kept whiffing with Electric Generator and it was like, screw it. We're playing 20 Lightning. We are not going to whiff energy anymore with this deck. And I imagine they're probably going to be pretty successful in that regard. I just kind of wish we would see like an EXP share or like a Raihan or something like that if they're not going to play Flaffy. I definitely wouldn't mind trying out something like this. Maybe just cutting maybe 1 or 2 lightning energy, maybe 1 or 2 switching cards to maybe just make the list a little bit more well-rounded, but super cool engine they're experimenting with here. So next up we have a version that is going to be including Flaffy. I mean, it definitely does make sense. It does sort of come at the cost of not being able to fill up your bench quite as easily with as many Reggies perhaps, or maybe even an extra backup attacker, but definitely does give you some more stable energy acceleration throughout the course of a game. So this is another deck that's also playing the 2 copies of Jacques here to search for evolutions. But I think the really wild card they're playing here is the 1/1 Magnezone VSTAR. So I guess they do have access to that VSTAR power, though I have a feeling if they're using this, they're probably using it more so for the first attack that does, what is it, 160? Is that what it does? And then you search your deck for 2 items, something like that. And then they also do have the 1 Pachirisu, which I do like as well. I like having maybe some sort of 1 prize attacker option in your Miraidon decks. And for our last Miraidon deck idea, this is almost more of like a Flappy deck than a Miraidon deck. Because as you can see, they're not playing Regieleki VMAX at all. This is more so like a Flaffy box that uses Miraidon to get set up. But, you know, they also do have the baby Regieleki over here. I actually do like how the 40 snipe sets up some math for your Miraidon EX from time to time. They also have the 1 Raichu, which definitely seems cool since you can make some big one-shot plays. And then they also do have the 2 Ampharos EX as like, I guess, a more tanky attacker that probably isn't going to get one-shot like some of your other multi-prize Pokemon here. Now, the one interesting thing is they're not actually playing any electricity generators, which I guess kind of makes some sense to a degree because Flaffy can already accelerate energy. Everything else I think looks pretty self-explanatory, but they are playing 2 double turbos, which definitely signals to me they are looking to be a little bit more aggressive with Ampharos than maybe some other decks out there, just because Ampharos has the discard 2 energy part of its attack, so you can just pay for that with double turbo and potentially still be able to attack next turn without finding switching methods and all that stuff. I definitely still think I like the Regieleki VMAX version of Miraidon a little bit better, but the upside to Flappy definitely seems like you have a little bit more flexibility with the attackers you want to use. But that's going to be it for all the decks we're looking at today, guys. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, there are a ton of other ones, plenty of archetypes I didn't even cover in this video today. So I'll put that link down below in the description if you do want to go check out all of the additional lists on PokemonCard.io. But of course, guys, I want to hear from you today. What of these decks look promising to you? And especially in regards to decks like Miraidon and Gardevoir that have a bunch of different ways you can take them, which of these different versions is going to be your favorite? But as always, guys, if you did enjoy today's content, remember to leave a like on the video. And if you're feeling a little bit extra generous and want to take that support to the next level, you can also become a patron at patreon.com/rarecandytcg or pick up some merch at rarecandytcg.com. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.